A new report says the Red Sox are interested in stealing one of the best players for the best team in the American League East. Bo Bichette on the Red Sox radar, according to Rob Bradford of WEEI. That's a name that is kind of weird. Let's bring in a familiar name. Jackson Roberts of the Red Sox on SI joining the Wicked Boston show here. Jackson, Bo Bichette, like, where does that come from?
Bo Bichette. It's interesting, and Cam, thanks for having me on. I hope you solve your identity crisis with your name there.
Thank you.
I'm intrigued because I feel like the Red Sox at this point are just putting out the feelers for everybody. And while I would put the odds of Bo Bichette actually joining the team fairly low compared to Bregman, Schwarber, and Alonso, I wouldn't put it past them. And more importantly, I think what they're maybe trying to do here is drive up the market for the Blue Jays and say, like, hey, we want this guy. We'll offer him $200 million. And then the Blue Jays counter and say, okay, we'll give him $220 and we'll give him the 8th year or something. I feel like that's a pretty common practice in free agency, just like try and extract every dollar out of your division rivals when you know they really want a reunion with a particular player. So anything could be on the table. I wouldn't necessarily hate Bichette, over Bregman for the next 5 years. I think it's a reasonable comparison. I mean, Bregman is certainly older. He's a better defender. He, what position he's going to play. With Bichette, you would kind of have to figure out whether he's second or third. But the bat is real, and he's always crushed the ball at Fenway. So I wouldn't necessarily be against it, but I wouldn't put it high on the scale of things I think are going to happen.
Yeah, so the smokescreen theory seems like a legit one. We see Tampa do that a lot. In the AL East, we see Tampa, oh yeah, we're finally interested in somebody.
Yeah. I thought Tampa really was going after Aaron Judge, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I heard that the ink was almost dry and it fell through like the A-Rod Red Sox thing. I think it was that close. But looking at Bichette, like, let's just play it out, and they're really interested and they want to bring him in. You mentioned there's obviously no certainty they're going to bring Alex Bregman back, And so if Bo Bichette comes in here, how does this infield look? Where does he fit in?
I think so. I mean, if we're doing the scenario where Bichette comes in and they're not re-signing Bregman,
yes, good point.
My guess would be Bichette at second base, where he played in the World Series and has some modicum of professional experience. I mean, he's obviously been a shortstop otherwise whenever he's been a Blue Jay. And I would think they would move Marcelo Meyer to third, and they saw him play third this season, and they really liked what they saw defensively. And I think you, at that point, it becomes a legitimate question at that point as to whether you go get, a big bat at first base, because obviously Bichette's going to cost probably even more money than Bregman was going to. So if you had the capacity to get Bregman and Alonso per se, I don't know if you also have the capacity to get Bichette and Alonso. So I think potentially a Bichette signing, and, I still don't think it's super realistic, but that might be a lifeline for Tristan Casas in some scenario. I also have seen Tristan Casas may very well be traded by opening day. So I think there's a lot of things that are still on the table. It's probably the most uncertain time of the offseason because aside from the 4 trades they made yesterday, we don't really know what the Red Sox have in store. And I'm interested to see how it all plays out, because I think for every move, there's 3 counter moves that are, pretty much equally interesting.
Yeah, I do want to get to the trade frenzy in a second, because it seems, a lot of lower level names, guys that, some fans aren't sad to see them go, but I think it has a lot of interesting behind the scenes stuff there. I'm just thinking with the Bichette thing. So you lay it out there, you go out and get a guy who's a career shortstop. You mentioned they played him at second. He was a liability at shortstop defensively. We saw what Trevor Story was at shortstop at the end of the season. That feels counterproductive if that did happen, and you brought in a career shortstop to play second base while a career shortstop is kind of floundering at shortstop, and you almost essentially lost a playoff game last year because you don't have infield defense. Am I thinking too fatalistically about that?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, are we, if you get Bichette and you just settle him in at second base for like the next 5 years, then that doesn't really have much bearing on Trevor Story, in my opinion. And if anything, it's, a little bit of insurance for if Trevor Story winds up getting hurt, like he has 3 of the past 4 years, then you have both Meyer and Bichette who could take over, because Meyer might get hurt too. And then all of a sudden, Bichette's your only option at shortstop from what we've seen. So, playing out that scenario, I don't find it to be, too, scary of a proposition for the Red Sox. I do wonder about Story's defense long term. I was a little bit surprised with how emphatic Craig Breslow was at the GM meetings about Story keeping the shortstop position. But, after last offseason, first of all, I don't think you're in danger of like a Rafael Devers situation with Trevor Story, where if you try to move his position, he's going to demand a trade. And I think, if anything, Breslow can posture however he wants. At the end of the day, if there was a better shortstop option out there, I think the Red Sox would go after it. But you're looking at Meyer and his inability to stay healthy, and I think you just want that guy to prove he can. And otherwise, you're looking at how can you improve this offense, and hopefully the infield defense kind of comes along naturally. And Meyer playing 150 games certainly would help with that.
So let's talk about improving the middle of the order, because Bichette, good hitter, but does he fit really any of the needs that you have middle of the order right-handed bat? Well,
he's certainly right-handed. So that checks the box. I think so. It's
okay.
I want a 40 homer guy first and foremost. And if Bichette were to be like the main marquee addition, and they weren't going to go for, if it's just Bichette and it's not Bregman, Alonso, or Schwarber, then I'd be maybe a little bit concerned about the, kind of the continuing lack of home run pop. There could be other ways to find that. I don't know. It's so early in the off season. But to me, it's like the guy hits 300. He leads the American League in hits whenever he stays healthy for a full season. Could be a good defensive second baseman for all we know. Obviously, there were some struggles at shortstop, and I feel like from what I saw, he was able to still make the spectacular play every now and again. It's just like maybe a footwork thing and an inconsistent throwing thing, and those things could be corrected at second base a little bit. So I would welcome the addition. But I certainly think that I would prioritize guys who I feel like are going to hit me 40 home runs. And I don't necessarily know that Bichette's that guy.
I think I'm there with you. I like a good 40 home run guy. Sue me. I don't care. I don't care that. Yeah, I know, right? But when you get a chance to get Kyle Harrison and Jordan Hicks on your roster, Jackson, you cannot pass up that opportunity. Look at what they did for you in the playoffs last year. You can't pass up that kind of opportunity, right?
Sounds like crickets to me. I'm hearing crickets in the background.
I get it. So obviously then, Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber still have to be at the top of your list. And I would imagine Pete Alonso, as we've talked about, is probably getting the slight edge there because he can play in the field. I know a lot of people don't like his defense, but he can play in the field. Right-handed, which helps just a little bit more, even though Schwarber hit 56 homers, and the price is probably going to be a little bit lower than Schwarber. Is that still the way you're seeing it, or do you think that market is just going to get crazy for both of them?
I think that to me, it's like a real. What's the word I'm looking for here? I think it's more realistic to sign Pete Alonso. I don't necessarily think he's a better fit for the Red Sox. You can make that argument. You can also make the argument that you want the guy who hit 56 homers as opposed to 38. But I think the reality is that the Phillies aren't going to let Schwarber go anywhere. And I think the Mets are much more willing to part ways with Alonso. We basically saw it last offseason that they were willing to walk away from the table if he wanted anything more than 2-3 years. I think their best offer to him before the 2 years for 54 he signed for was something like 3 for 90, maybe even less than that. So really, they knew they had a pretty depressed market for him with the qualifying offer, and they also knew that he was coming off a bad year by his standards. But to me, if I'm Pete Alonso, I'm like, screw these guys. I want to go somewhere else. And I feel like Boston could be that place. So just in terms of who I think is more signable, I think it would be Alonso over Schwarber. But certainly I would not complain one bit with either one of them joining this lineup, because that's exactly what they need in both cases.
I'll take either one. Obviously, Kyle Schwarber, famously from Waltham. Pete Alonso, his wife's from Quincy. He spends some of the offseason here in Massachusetts. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there. Speaking of throwing it out there, you said this. It sounds like the Red Sox are just like interest kings again, except now they actually have some more ambition. They have some freed up money, and they have some trade assets. So it's a little bit more spicy. Interest kings in this offseason. We've heard pitching names being thrown about, all kinds of them, right? Tarek Skubal, Freddie Peralta was the most recent one with the Brewers, and whether he's on the trade market. But we heard again on Monday that the Red Sox, according to a report, were making a big push for Joe Ryan. That's a name that keeps coming back. We have talked about it quite a bit. With those other names being thrown around there, is Joe Ryan still, while it's in the shadows, kind of the most likely scenario for that Red Sox number 2 starter?
Most likely is interesting. I wouldn't necessarily put it above a 50% chance, but if you're going to ask me like who I think is most likely between Joe Ryan and 9 other guys who all have kind of similar ceilings, I probably would take Joe Ryan. I think the bottom line is that the Twins have to be a little bit careful, unfortunately, because if you trade both Ryan and Pablo Lopez, then I think you're pretty much guaranteeing that Byron Buxton asks out. And if you do that, then I don't think anybody's coming to Twins games for the next 5 years. So as much as it might be tempting to tear the whole thing down, they may feel like they have to hang on to Ryan this year, just purely from like an economical standpoint, which is, not a good way to run your team, but they're already kind of running their team in a bad way. So it's not really up to the Red Sox as to whether or not they do it. But, the other side of that coin is, do the Red Sox make an offer to the Twins that they feel like they just can't pass up? For a guy who has 2 years left under contract, who was having a phenomenal season until, the last month and a half or so. And I don't fault him for that one bit, because if my entire team got traded away, I would probably struggle to keep producing at the same level as well. So as much as like he had a 4.5 win season with a 3.4 ERA, I feel like you're really getting a guy who you're more so expecting like a 5.5 win season from and a 3 flat ERA next year. So I'd be super excited about that prospect. The Red Sox have been generating pitching prospects like, Tom Brady dog lab clones. So I'm not particularly worried about them trading a few more of those. And I would really welcome the move.
It's about time they started cloning some pitching prospects. It's about time. I don't think they've ever had like this many at the same time. And it's not like, hey, they're about to have a new starting rotation next year, but they've got a pretty, obviously with Bayo, who's been at the major league level a couple of years, and then you talk about the Earlys and the Tolleys. It's a heck of a good situation. But
and it leads into all those trades we saw them make yesterday, because they feel so comfortable with their pitching depth that they're willing to let go of guys like Brennan Bernardino, Chris Murphy, Josh Winkowski, who they didn't even trade, they just cut, because they feel so good about the depth they've built up.
Yeah, and I did want to go off of that too, because there was a lot of moves. It's very inside baseball, but there's no one I'd rather go through the baseball weeds with here on the Wicked Boston Show than Jackson Roberts of Sports Illustrated, because I know you're going through the weeds too. A lot of these moves, especially a lot of the minor ones, had to do with freeing up space on the 40. And this was something that was really interesting to look at about the last year, of guys that the Red Sox needed to get on the 40-man roster so that they didn't lose them for nothing in the Rule 5. So how do you think they're maneuvering that? Who is not there that you would have expected to be there at this point? And are they trying to make room for a prospect in particular?
I think they actually added more people than I was confident they were going to add, which led to the extra trades. Mm-hmm. And to me, there's a few big winners from yesterday. One is Shane Drohan, who apparently is just going to be like in the mix to be in the bullpen, because otherwise I don't think they would have protected him. He's 26. He's had some injury concerns, but he struck out a ton of dudes in AAA last year. And they basically gutted the rest of their left-handed bullpen. So while they might try to, say bring back a Steven Matz in free agency or a Justin Wilson, I feel like he's going to get a legitimate shot to pitch out of that bullpen early in the season. The other side is, aside from like Tolle and Early, who I don't think they would do this with, do they kick a Kyle Harris into the bullpen at some point? That would certainly not look great for the Rafael Devers trade, but they're not in the business of winning the Rafael Devers trade. They're in the business of winning baseball games. So there's that side of things. Tyler Uberstein is an interesting addition that I like, because he was really like consistent and gave you a lot of bulk at AAA last year. And that's like kind of somebody in the Hunter Dobbins mold of like guys you might not expect that are going to like play an important role this season, but a couple guys get hurt and all of a sudden Tyler Uberstein's like in your rotation. So I had no issue with that. And then I think the big one is David Sandlin because he throws 100, and the experiment of putting him in the bullpen didn't really work out for his short promotion to AAA last year, but they need guys that throw 100, and I don't really see room in the rotation. So I'd be interested to see if, he's definitely not going to like break camp with the roster, but does he become an impact arm for that bullpen down the stretch? I think all three of those guys are really interesting ads. And again, like kind of more than I expected to be done with regards to the 40-man yesterday.
A lot of that 40-man movement, a lot of that 40.
I love it. It's one of my favorite because like, those guys are going to matter at some point. I mean, you think about Brennan Bernardino, who they just traded away. I mean, he was a guy who they scooped up with 2 1/3 innings to his name in the majors at age 30, and he ended up throwing some huge innings for them the last 3 years. So these are the type of moves that aren't going to get the big flashy breaking news headlines, but they wind up mattering at some point during a 162 game season.
It's where GM makes his money. One of the places where GM makes his money. Speaking of, in the trades and the prospects and guys the Red Sox have let go recently, saw a very interesting report that the White Sox are okay, potentially, trading their top catching prospect, Kyle Teal. Could the Red Sox just do the funniest thing ever and just go bring Kyle Teal back?
I don't think the White Sox are trading Kyle Teal. I mean, I love that. It would be amazing, right? Like
it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Like
the one guy they would miss. But yeah, I mean, he was really good for them this year, and he's certainly not like a prospect anymore. Like he was a legitimate top half of the league, big league catcher last year. So if anything, I mean, I saw I can't remember exactly like what format it was in, but I definitely saw something along the lines of what you were just talking about. And to me, like, why would you not trade Caro, who's like the less proven commodity of the two? But yeah, I mean, the Red Sox just acquired a White Sox catcher yesterday. So I'm not certain they're going to do it again, but I guess Ronnie Hernandez could be something somewhere down the road.
Who knows? I mean, it looks like the White Sox are doing better with that trade so far than they did with the Sale trade, which looked foolproof for them, and it just didn't work out. Jackson Roberts with the Red Sox on SI. Obviously, as you could tell from this interview, we've got so many rumors flying around with the Red Sox. So, Jackson, let me know where the people can find you and what kind of things you guys are cooking up this week.
Yeah, I mean, as always, go check out Red Sox on SI. Certainly, like as much wall-to-wall coverage as you'll get, of this team throughout the offseason. The offseason, as we've said, is like kind of one of the more exciting times for, kind of the people like us that cover the rumor mill. And yeah, I mean, I feel like we're pretty much just going to be like every single day you'll get like 8 to 10 stories in your feed. So it's going to be wall-to-wall stuff. And at some point the moves will actually start flying, but you follow Red Sox on SI, you'll know kind of what the moves might be before they actually happen. That's my pitch.
Yeah, and if you want to know which ones are BS or not, check out the Red Sox on SI or anytime that Jackson Roberts is here on the Wicked Boston Show. Jackson, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for hopping on again.
Thank you. See you next time.
We definitely will. There he goes. Jackson Roberts of the Red Sox on SI, our foremost Red Sox rumor expert, Jackson Roberts. So check out his work and all the great stuff they're doing over there on Red Sox on SI. What would you think about Bo Bichette? Would that make any sense to you? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Of course, we come at you every weekday live at noon Eastern time on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts as well on the Wicked Boston Show with Cam Stewart.